Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode 8, and thank you for subscribing and downloading and listening to another episode of the podcast. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. That's the best way for people when searching for podcasts to come across this one, as it raises up the name and the podcast up in the search engine. But then also to get the word out via word of mouth. If you like something, we are willing and kind of wired to tell people other things that we like, no matter if it's something that we did yesterday or something we did last year and it'd be a great vacation we went on or a fun vacation we went on. We are willing and like I said, it's kind of wired to tell people other things that we like in life. So if you like the podcast, no matter if this is your first episode you're listening to or you've been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know of the podcast, of the Jay Stevens Podcast. Throughout this week, a couple things happened big for the podcast. Number one, a guy that I was referred to named Dominic Marshall put some last minute finishing touches onto the new logo for the podcast. He did a phenomenal job. Him and I were texting throughout the week. I let him know of what my ideas were for how I thought I wanted the logo to look. Then he put his brain, his creativity juices to work to put the masterpiece together. That is the new logo. Dominic did a great job. Finished it up Saturday morning. I posted it Saturday afternoon, and then it should have hit every single platform, and we'll be talking about that here in a second, shortly after, as the feeds have to reset or refresh for the new logo to be on. 30 minutes after posting the new logo, I think a couple of them had already updated, but I think it takes quite a while for things to update on the different apps that the podcast is on. And speaking of the apps, I've been working on getting the podcast out on as many apps and platforms that are possible. I have been listening to podcasts for quite a long time. I've had an iPhone for many, many years. So the apps that I've utilized for podcasts was literally iTunes or the Apple Podcast app. Didn't really realize how many different apps there were for podcasting or for listening to podcasts, as all I know is the one that I utilize, the one that I listen to. So that's really it. I've realized that Spotify has podcast on there, but I didn't realize, like I said, how many there were. Anchor, the host of the podcast, one of their selling points is they will publish your podcast for you to different apps, different platforms. Well, some of the platforms that they published to or that were on their list didn't get published, so I had to do that manually. Currently, as it stands, the podcast is currently on 11 different apps. The Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, the TuneIn app, Player FM, Podbean, the Anchor app, the host of the show. They do have a library that hosts different podcasts. Stitcher and Castbox. Not on Podcast One. That takes an invite only, and only the top of the top get invited to be there. Not on iHeartRadio. I'm still working on that one as we speak, and a few others. So in the coming weeks and maybe coming months, the podcast will hopefully be on more than the 11. But the 11 is amazing, and as a young podcaster, someone that's new to podcasting, I'm excited and happy that I'm able to get the podcast out on as many platforms and apps that I can. If you have heard of some that say, hey, I utilize this app, email me, let me know, because I would like to be there as well. Really excited and hope that the podcast can get on more apps very, very soon. Let's go ahead and take a trip outside of the United States this week, across the pond, you may want to say, either to across the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic, because now more than ever, the NBA's international flavor is very, very strong. Never would have thought that we would come to a day that so many players from overseas would come to the NBA to play, but the skill set from overseas has caught up to the NBA, and it's fun to watch so many international players play in the association. Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, Marc Gasol, Steven Adams, Dirk Nowitzki, Nicholas Batum, Joel Embiid, Tristan Thompson. All these players have a couple things in common. One, they all play in the NBA. Two, they all have international descent. They are all classified as international basketball players. This past Monday, and I'm going to talk about why I mentioned them here in a second. This past Monday, a week ago Monday, we had the NBA awards, and 4 of the 5 NBA awards went to international basketball players. Players that came from overseas that now play in the NBA. Giannis, as all people know, Giannis was your MVP, and I believe he deserved the MVP. He played he was the best player from beginning to end. There was no stopping point throughout the year. He put up phenomenal numbers and led his team to one of the best records in the NBA. Rudy Gobert came from France, Defensive Player of the Year. Pascal Siakam came from Cameroon, Most Improved Player of the Year. Luka Doncic came from Slovenia, Rookie of the Year. Then also Lou Williams was the 6th Man of the Year. He's from America. But all of these players, they have it's amazing that they're in the NBA, but they're all players that we have heard of. They're all players that are looked at as some all-stars, some are stars. Some are great rebounders, some are great defenders, some are whatever it may be. You think about a great shooter or a great big man shooter. You think of Dirk Nowitzki, or you think of a good big man currently in the NBA, someone that can hit the three-point shot, get their own shot on the block, or even be a great defender. You think of Joel Embiid. You think of an old school guy, or not old school, an older gentleman, an older guy who's almost on his last leg, will be leaving the league very, very soon, but he is still one of the better big men in the league, in Marc Gasol. Think of Giannis. You need a bucket. You think somebody you want a bucket down low? Giannis can do that. Now, granted, he is going to start from outside, but he takes 2 steps, does a little spin move or a little shake, and he's at the hole. He is so long that it's hard to stop him. Think about a young talent, a top young talent in the NBA, someone that could be an MVP down the road, in Luka Doncic. The international flavor, the international desire, the players from overseas, their desire, their dream to come to the league, I think is a lot higher than it used to be. Now, when I was a kid and I heard stories, players overseas used to watch videos and watch games of Michael Jordan, and they said, I want to be like Mike. That was the same thing that a lot of people here in America said. We want to be like Mike. You used to hear stories all the time. Players used to wake up early or even not get any sleep just so they could watch the Bulls play, so they could see what Michael Jordan was going to do in his next game, in his next game, in his next game. And now that was late 80s and all throughout the 90s. Those players are doing that. But now those players that were hoping and dreaming and watching Michael Jordan to once have the desire to be like Mike, a lot of those players are in the league today. Now, some of them never watched Jordan play, but then there are a lot of them that never watched him play, but they grew up watching, you might want to say, they saw Shaq, or they saw Kobe, or they saw Steve Nash, and they're like, man, I want to be like these players. I want to be like these top players at their position. Now, Steve Nash is also an international player from Canada, but also you got other players that are saying, hey, man, this guy from Canada, this guy's coming here. He has great footwork as he got perfected his footwork in soccer. But Steve Nash, if he can do it, if he can come from his country to play into the NBA, to be a top player, to be an MVP, to come close to potentially win an NBA championship, I want to do that too. And I think it's kind of the desire that that's why we see such the rise that we've seen in international players players coming from other countries to come here. That could be part of the reason. We also see a lot of high school players, or a couple high school players, that are not wanting to go and play into college and play in the NCAA, that are wanting to go forego their college career or their 1 year that they would end up playing anyway in college to play overseas. I remember I missed it when R.J. Hampton went on Get Up on ESPN to declare that he was going to play that he was going to not play in college to go play over in New Zealand. But I think that the way he conducted himself in a very mature manner, as I was able to watch the replay later, I think that is going to put a great idea in some people's minds and in their heads, saying this guy's not going to college. He's not going the conventional route. Yes, it is very, very tough for a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid to go from America, living with their parents or living with their guardian, to go to another country, to have another walk of life, potentially another language. Now, granted, New Zealand, they do speak English, so I think it'll be that's also another good spot for him. But it's tough to go from your walk of life to another person's culture, where you have to be incorporated into their walk of life, their style of basketball. Their style may be a tad different, as I know overseas they are better with teaching fundamentals at a younger age than us in America, than a lot of Americans are, as it is tougher to teach fundamentals. No matter what age it is a tougher thing to teach. But I do think him going to New Zealand is going to open up a lot of eyes to a lot of people in America and say, hey, maybe I can do that. Maybe the best thing for me to get to the NBA, to be the best player I can be or that I want to be, is to not go to college, not be forced to go to class and have a crazy schedule, to go overseas, to wake up, eat, sleep, breathe basketball 24/7. The best way to get to do something and to get better at something is to do it over and over and over and over again, and as many times as you can, just to have a form of a repetition or a repeated habit, so that you could get better at that task. Not only R.J. Hampton, but also LaMelo Ball. His dad recently came out and said LaMelo will possibly play as recent. He said LaMelo, there's a good chance he will play in Australia. LaMelo's amateur status is in jeopardy, as he already has been paid to play basketball. But I do think also for LaMelo, it's a great thing because he has matured into a very good basketball player. When I first saw LaMelo play basketball, now granted, he was 15 years old, and I said, oh, that kid's not that good. But granted, I'm comparing him to LiAngelo and Lonzo, who were a lot better. LiAngelo could score against anybody. That was not his problem. But I was like, man, this kid's skinny. He has no frame. He won't be able to be able to handle the more physical play either in college or the league. Then I literally reminded myself, he's still a kid. I tell myself all the time, don't judge kids. Don't judge young athletes because they're still in high school. They're still maturing. They're still growing up into being the young men and young women that they're going to be. And when I reminded myself that, I realized, okay, let me give him a chance. He's not his brother. His brother went to college. He's not his brother LiAngelo. His brother ended up going to college as well. As I watched LaMelo get better as a basketball player, not only did his decision making change, but he was a better basketball player, a better all-around basketball player than he once was. I also believe him possibly going to Australia is a great move for him. For I think the past couple years, 3 years, all he's known is basketball. That's all he's known. Now, he did go to a prep school, Spire Academy in Ohio, where he did end up living a prep school life, where it's more basketball, you're there for basketball, you're not for school. You do have to go to class, but class is not really your main focus. You're more there for basketball purposes, which is why you did go there in the first place. I do understand that, but also I think that is a great transition from being just basically all ball for so long and saying, well, I don't want to go from playing basketball 24/7 to going to college and then going to the league, potentially being a number one pick, as his dad has proclaimed that his son will be. I do think it's a great fit for him. His amateur status is in jeopardy, and going from all ball, and then continuing that all ball mentality day in, day out, 24/7, living, breathing, eating basketball all day, is going to be a huge fit. Once again, just like RJ Hampton, LaMelo will not have to worry about learning another language. You got players like Stephon Marbury, great career, great influence, kind of looked at as a Chinese basketball star over there in China, as he has won league championships, won league MVPs over there. We got Kobe Bryant, Klay Thompson, Dwayne Wade. I could keep going. Players that have great international influence with their brands, their shoes, their clothes, where these people look at them like sometimes in higher regard than we do here in America. International stars, I like the flavor. Your team has international basketball players on it. My team does as well. Hopefully, my desire is that they keep all of theirs in this crazy free agent period we're about to embark upon here shortly. But international basketball, international players in the NBA, I don't think the trend is going to stop anytime soon, because these players are just as good, if not better, than the ones born here in the NBA. Instead of making this segment a post-free agency or post-free agent observations after players have decided where they want to play next season, which that would take the podcast being released late Monday evening or Tuesday morning, I decided to do a pre-free agent period observation list, as I'm going to be recording at my regular time. Didn't want to prolong the recording and run into some issues recording a little bit later than normal on a Monday evening. So I did make a list. I'm not really a big list guy, but we have 5 observations leading into the NBA free agency period. At the time of you listening to this, the free agent period would have started, and I'm sure a lot of people would have already decided where they want to play. So you'll just be able to listen to this, and you'll get to kind of listen and then see how some of these things kind of could have played out going forward. Number 1, 40% of the league is on the free agent market. That literally is insane. I was going back and looking through some different history of the free agent period. When free agency, like in the 90s, of course, that was when the period where more players stayed with one team longer than they do now. You didn't see many moves like you do now, or many people moving as frequently as you do now. And Al Horford, I think he's a great fit for Boston. I think for what he's doing there, for what he provides to that team, his skill set there, I think he fits them in their mold, especially with Brad Stevens being the coach, very, very well. So I don't get why he wanted to. I kind of get why he wanted to opt out, maybe get a long-term deal with the team. But the more that I heard leading up to this, to people recording, and of course ESPN is literally having everybody work right now for this free agent period. It doesn't sound like that's kind of where his head is leaning, as signing a long-term deal is there. I don't understand it. Also, there's rumblings of Kyrie leaving Boston, which honestly, it's a great fit for him and the team. I think that they'll be able to go back to the way that they played the previous year, as Kyrie's his belief of himself and his ideas, how he thinks a team should be ran, and how he believes his play should be for any particular team. I think that's kind of been a cancer and a hindrance to those young players' growth. Their growth has kind of been slowed because of the way Kyrie wants to play, and also the way that the front office wanted to utilize the Gordon Hayward injury and getting him back on the court, implementing him back on the court, and meshing with the team. Not really sure. It's kind of odd, but it's kind of also nice to see so many players feel comfortable moving. That leads into number 2. Player mobility is at an all-time high. I kind of got ahead of myself earlier, but I did go back. I think it was 98, 99, 96, 97, 95, 96. A lot of the players back then, even though they were free agents, there weren't that many. Players were signing contracts or signing contract extensions a lot sooner than they did, a lot sooner then than they are now. Now players are saying, well, even though I can get paid here, do I have a better chance of winning there? And that's kind of that mindset that a lot of players have. Of course, you do have your Russell Westbrooks, a guy that wants to stay. Paul George, who I think was kind of confused for a while on what he wanted. His actions showed one thing, but but his talk showed something else. So I think he was kind of confused on what he wanted to do or the right move for him. The closer it got to the decision, I think he believed where he wanted to go, but he didn't want the world to know exactly where he wanted to play. That's kind of where the confusion came there. Even once he got to OKC, no one knew where he was going to play after his first year. It's just kind of the confusion of, man, I don't want to let people down, but I know what I want to do. What will the backlash be? Will people think that I'm crazy, or that will people call me a cupcake for going to a situation that's possibly better than where I am? So on and so on and so on. Kind of that Kevin Durant syndrome, where Kevin Durant got made different names for what happened to him with his decision to go from OKC to Golden State. Paul George, knowing that him and Russell Westbrook make a great team and great tandem together, great duo. He was wondering, will people think that I'm crazy for leaving Russ to go somewhere else? Number 3, every team has the ability to get better. Every single one. Very, very similar to how people with the NFL draft, they go into that draft thinking, oh, well, my team could have been the worst team in the NFL. But by drafting this player and drafting that player, we can go from the bottom to potentially being a wild card team. Now, yes, to people that are not a fan of that team, you think, oh, that's crazy. That's not going to happen. But a lot of fan bases, they're not realistic. They have this false sense of reality, which, I mean, it's okay. That's part of what being a fan is. You believe your team is better than what your team actually is at times. You believe your team can win every single game when they step on a field or step onto a court. I mean, that's part of being a fan. That's what makes sports fun. But every team has the ability to get better. There are so many free agents, so many players free right now in the NBA that your team, if they're willing to open up that pocketbook, they have the ability to sign 1, maybe 2 players, not max players. They can sign a couple players that can make them go from where they currently are, produce more wins, and produce playoff series wins down the road. Number 4. Kevin Durant is no longer the top free agent for next season due to his injury and him not being able to play. Now, you could say after Kevin Durant heals, he is going to be another top player. He's going to be a perennial all-star. He is going to be an MVP candidate. I don't see that, and a lot of doctors don't see that either. He may be able to be an all-star based off of fan voting, as fans voted Kobe Bryant to be an all-star when Kobe was on his last legs in the league. But I do think that ruptured Achilles is going to alter his game. He may not have the same lift or the same movement or same ability with his jump shot. Now, with the technology, with the knowledge, the information, with the doctors that we have, Kevin Durant could possibly come back and play at a high level. I don't see it, but it is very, very possible, because we have seen players, Paul George injury, come back and his play is better than what it was before he got hurt. It is possible that Kevin Durant could come back and be that dude again, but in the way that I view that type of injury, and I've seen how it has affected Boogie Cousins. Now, granted, Boogie is out of shape. Boogie can't jump. Boogie can barely run at times and get up and down the court, but Kevin Durant being a smaller guy, I do think that injury and how the Achilles affects your movement, not just as a player, but just a human being in general, is going to make his game change slightly. Kawhi Leonard being free right now, I do view him as being the top free agent for next season, as he is currently going to be an MVP candidate for next year. Kevin Durant is not. And lastly, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy, do you want to win? I don't understand why he would want to leave Philadelphia. Maybe it could be because Joel Embiid and him don't get along. He may not like Embiid's work ethic or his diet, as in the playoffs his diet did get questioned, as he was told that he was possibly eating some things that could harm him and would not have him in the best shape or best ability to play at a high level during the playoffs. But everywhere Jimmy has gone, he has been a problem. He has been an issue. This would be his 4th team in 4 years that he will be playing for. When he left Chicago, he didn't leave the team with a good taste in their mouth in regards to him and how he plays. Minnesota, when he left Minnesota, I believe the entire year there, it was Jimmy Butler this, Jimmy Butler that. There were problems with Jimmy once he got there and his mindset and how he was going to treat the younger players and the team there. Philadelphia. Now, I thought him going from Minnesota to Philly was going to be, maybe not be the ideal fit, but it was going to be a great fit for them when trying to win and trying to win a championship, not only this year, but next year in the near future. But, Jimmy, you decide to go from Philly, a team that was that was very, very, very close to being in the Eastern Conference Finals. If it wasn't for Kawhi hitting a shot, you would have been there playing the Bucks and had a very good chance to win. You decide to go from Philly to go to Miami. Let's run that back. Not saying he's going to go there, but you decide to go from Philly to your desire is to go to Miami. Miami ain't won nothing since LeBron left. The Miami ain't been good since LeBron left. The only player, I was talking to someone recently, the only player I could think that's on the Heat, now I can name Pat Riley, he's not a player. I could name the coach, Spoelstra, he's not a player. The only player I could list, Hassan Whiteside. Now you could say, well, you don't know everything that's going. You don't know the players or the NBA as great as you think. No, I'll tell you, I'll be the first. There are players in the league that I don't know, I haven't heard of. Are they players that are no names? Probably. Do they produce? Probably not. Are they players that when you hear their name, you got to Google? Yeah. I mean, I think the Heat may still have Gordon Dragic. But I also think that he may have left. I'm not sure. But that's just kind of how you think when you view the Heat. They haven't won. They haven't won lately. They're not a team that's on the up and up. Why do you want to? The only thing I could think, I can go to Miami. They got the beautiful weather. They got the great center. They got the great lifestyle. That's probably the only reason why he would want to go. But you're in Philly, sir. You have a chance to win now. The Eastern Conference, with no one knowing where players are going to go. The Bucks could lose Robin Lopez. I think it's the right Lopez I'm talking about. If not, forgive me. The Raptors could lose Kawhi. So the two teams in the conference finals, they could be gone. And all of a sudden, you could go from that to going to the Heat when you're the next team up. I think if you stay in Philly, your team is more it has a higher chance of winning the Eastern Conference than, say, Boston does, because Boston's team is up in the air on where their players are going to go. But nope, you decide to go for the glitz, the glamour, go for that Miami lifestyle. If that's what you want, go right ahead and go there. But I don't think that's a great fit for a person, for an NBA player. Yeah, you could get paid there, but I don't believe you'll actually be winning when you go to Miami. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is, like I said earlier, episode 8. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review after listening to the podcast, or even while you're listening to the podcast. That's a great way for people that are searching for the podcast to have that name come up higher in the search engine so they can come across that and they don't have to do a deep search when finding the podcast. Also, remember to get the word out via word of mouth. If you like something, we are more willing and also wired to tell people via word of mouth of the things that we like and enjoy. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr_J25. Once again, that is at Dr_JAY, the number 2 and the number 5. You can send all emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Once again, you can send all emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. The 4th of July is coming up. Hope everyone has a safe and fun and enjoyable 4th of July on Thursday. You will not be hearing from me before then. So I hope everyone has a great time with their family and friends. Watches great fireworks shows. Even those of you that go to baseball games, I thought about going to a baseball game that Thursday. I would say, no, I prefer to just relax a little bit and just watch fireworks somewhere, watch a great fireworks show somewhere around the city. Once again, like I said, this is the Jay Stevens Podcast, episode 8. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.